Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see so many of you here for our very first Wednesday lunchtime concert of the year. For those of you I don't know, I'm Michael Downs, Director of Music here in St Andrews. As you will already have seen, I'm sure, we have a fantastic programme of concerts lined up for you this semester. Stronger programme, I think, than ever. We have a handy leaflet showing you all the wonderful Wednesday lunchtime concerts that are coming up. So we'd love to see you every week. Also, Joanna McGregor's concert tickets for that are now selling fast at the Buyer box office. So do get your tickets for that if you haven't already done so. I'm delighted to welcome for his first appearance in St Andrews, Lewis Kingsley Peart. Please give him a warm welcome.
Good afternoon and thank you. It's a very, very great pleasure to be here at the Laidlaw Music Centre this afternoon. It's my first time here and in this absolutely amazing recital room that you have with this beautiful Steinway Model B. I'm so looking forward to playing for you. I've prepared rather a varied recital programme based around a theme of salon music. And when we use the term salon music, I'm really referring to pieces that were frankly not written with spaces like this in mind. They were pieces written to be played in the home and enjoyed at kind of intimate gatherings and parties, and salons indeed as well. And I'm going to open my programme with some miniatures by Edvard Grieg, a name I'm sure is familiar with many of you. Now, when we think of Grieg, we really think of his larger scale works first, the A minor piano concerto and Peer Gynt and things like this. But I think in his heart, Grieg was actually a miniature composer. And by that, I don't mean less good, quite the opposite. The thing that fascinates me with Grieg is that he was able to condense in some of these lyric pieces, some of which are about 2 pages, 90 seconds long, such a vivid, deep emotional world and such a distinct compositional voice. I think that's a real gift that he had. And he was clearly very fond of this lyric piece form. He wrote around 10 volumes of lyric pieces, all of which are incredibly varied and imaginative. The first one I'm going to play is called Melody, and it's just that. It's quite a simple, beautiful melody, clothed in some rather interesting harmony for the time at which it was written. In fact, when I played this to an adult student of mine, I said, "Who do you think this is by?" And they said, "Well, I think it might be Grieg through the lens of a jazz musician." So make of that what you will. I'm then going to play a piece called Elegy, and this is such a kind of evocative, very intimate piece. The melody, for the most part, is in the left hand, whilst the right hand plays these kind of syncopated bell tolls. It's incredibly atmospheric. And then a personal favourite of mine, Little Bird, which you will know it's a little bird when you hear it. I won't say any more about that. And then really I'm going to finish with 2 of his most famous lyric pieces. We have Notturno, which is a nocturne and sounds just like a spring day in Norway. It's so charming, full of bird song and Nordic air. And then I'm going to finish with Wedding Day at Troldhaugen, which if you don't know by name, you will most certainly know when you hear it. Grieg wrote this as a 25th wedding anniversary present to his wife. And I think it sounds just like a wedding day. It's such happy, jubilant music. And I have a personal thought about the kind of slow middle section. I think this is rather like a lover's duet. You have the male voice in the left hand, female voice in the right, and they sort of dovetail in and out of each other before returning to all the hustle and bustle and festivities of the wedding party. So 5 lyric pieces by Edvard Grieg to start this afternoon's programme. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to stick with a Nordic flavour now with 5 pieces by Sibelius. Now, rather like Grieg, when we think of Sibelius, we don't immediately think of his piano music. We think of his large-scale works. You know, we think of him as sort of Finland's great symphonist, with works like Finlandia, for example. However, very few people know that he wrote over 100 pieces for solo piano. And he was writing these very much with the intention of them to be played by people at home. And frankly, he was writing because he wanted to make some money. I came across an article that said Sibelius had a chronic shortage of cash. And so he was writing these pieces to sell and be enjoyed by kind of amateur music makers in their home. And apparently when his daughter said to him, you know, why are you writing these piano pieces and not your great tone poems? He said, well, it's so you might have some butter on your bread. So it gives you an idea of the circumstances in which he was writing these pieces. The first piece I'm going to play is an impromptu, and it's from a set of 6 impromptus. And this melody was originally used in a melodrama that he wrote called Nights of Jealousy. And it's a rather sort of hypnotic piece in a way. And I'm then going to follow this with a piece called The Spruce. And this is one of his best-known piano pieces. You could say it's become something of an evergreen. And he writes so effectively for the piano in this, the way he spaces things. I'm sure you'll hear what I mean. It's so effectively written. And then I'm going to play one of his Opus 58 pieces called Réverie. Now, Opus 58 enjoyed huge success at the time at which it was written. It's a set of 10 pieces, but I'm going to play the first, Réverie. And critics absolutely loved this music and said it was some of the most inventive piano writing that they'd heard. And harmonically, it's so bizarre, frankly. And there's a huge chord on the second page that always takes me by surprise. I think, where did he get that harmony from? It's so inventive. I'm then going to play a piece called The Harpist, and you will hear why it's called that. It's the pianist is required to sort of imitate the sound of a harp. And then I'm going to finish the set with another piece from Opus 58 called Scherzino, and every bit as weird and wonderful as the piece that precedes it, Réverie. So 5 pieces, 5 miniatures by Sibelius now. Thank you very much. Now we come to a piece that is very special to me. This is by the American composer called Stephen Montague. And I first met Stephen back in 2018 when I was a second-year student at Music College studying for my undergraduate degree. And Stephen was turning 75, and they were looking for a pianist to take part in his 75th birthday celebrations at St. John Smith Square in London. And I was selected to play a part of his After Ives suite. And it was a very, very memorable occasion. I'll just give you a little bit of background about the day. It was a whole 24 hours of Stephen's music. And, well, not just Stephen's music, actually. Through the night, we had Eric Satie's Vexations, performed by several pianists in the crypt of St. John Smith Square. And if you don't know the Vexations, it's about half a page of music required to be repeated something like 840 times, and it took all night. Thankfully, I wasn't involved in that part of the project. Stephen worked very closely with John Cage, and so Stephen's music is incredibly experimental and avant-garde, and a fascinating story he tells me is that his earliest conducting lesson was in Florida with Ernst von Dochniani, so there's quite an amazing kind of pedigree here. Stephen has become a great friend over the years, and I commissioned him to write a piece in the kind of salon style that I've been playing for you. I wanted him to write a kind of 21st century take on the 19th century tradition of writing virtuoso concert paraphrases. And he's taken a little falling motif from Strauss's Scherzo, Strauss's Tales in the Vienna Woods, and put it into this piece called Scherzo in the Vienna Woods. It's a wild ride, and I'll see you on the other side. Wish me luck.